Coming in at number 5, we've got Ophanim. Back to basics with some angels ending in the suffix im, we've got another many-eyed, ever-turning wheel filled with fire and knowledge. This class of celestial being is well known throughout the Judeo-Christian theology as being extremely wise and therefore classified as an angel of knowledge. Most folks would say that knowledge is power, so we can probably assume these are quite powerful. With great power comes great responsibility though, and in that case, this means the angels never sleep. They just don't have the time, as they're supposed to be guarding God's throne in heaven. Generally, a lack of sleep leads to surliness and poor decision making, possibly even extra aggression, so maybe don't mess with these angels. They've got a lot on their minds and very little time to rest. Bad combo for somebody with authority over us mortals, don't you think? Ophanim are also known as thrones or wheels, and this has to do with how their spirits are situated. See, apparently they've had their spirits encased in these wheel-like structures that move with them wherever they go. This also gives them a very distinctive look. Flaming wheels in the sky, constantly spinning, covered in hundreds of eyes. It's hard to mistake them for anything else. Now, these eyes are meant to be constantly aware of everything around them, lining up well with the whole angel of knowledge thing. And as they're constantly monitoring everything, they're seeing how well what they're watching lines up with God's will. And guess what happens if they witness something that isn't so heavenly? Boom! Punishment. These are like the omnipotent security cameras of heaven. If you're doing something bad, sinful, or otherwise blasphemous, you're gonna get caught red-handed in HD, 4K VR. Not good for you or your eternal soul. With demons, at least they make you sign a contract or agree to a deal before they have total knowledge of and control over you. These fiery sky wheels are hull monitoring you from day one, and there's nothing you can do about it. Plus, they look plain freaky, all covered in ocular orbs and fire. Coming in at number 4, we've got fallen angels. We've done a lot of talking about biblical fallen angels and all sorts of beings similar to them, but today's selection of fallen angels comes from a book that is neither holy nor regularly found in hotel bedside tables. These ones show up in the always engrossing Dresden Files. In a world full of fairies, werewolves, demons, vampires, wizards, and more, one would think that there'd be an easy way to deal with fallen angels. This is not usually the case in the world of the Dresden Files, and in many cases, these angels are some of the most dangerous entities out there. Deception is their game, and they play it well. Essentially, all these shadow creatures do is use people's own minds against them in order to remove their free will. Like, most folks don't even realize they're being manipulated and controlled by fallen angels because they're just so good at it. Fallen angels take whatever inclinations you might normally have and twist them to make you act in ways you wouldn't otherwise. In doing so, they can lead you down horrible paths and ruin your life, all while making you feel like it's your fault. By throwing a healthy blend of powerlessness and personal responsibility into the mix, they've destroyed more mortal minds than can be counted. Hell, because they're so good at it, you could actually be under a fallen angel's influence right now. You know that bad thing you did and you feel guilty about? Well, if you start spiraling, now you know why. Just imagine a force beyond your understanding forcing you to follow a code of behavior you wouldn't accept, removing all choice from your life and preventing you from finding purpose. Sounds like living a nightmare, right? Almost like hell on earth. Coming in at number 3, we've got Uriel. Back to some biblical angels. Uriel is hardcore. We talked about the Gate Guardian last time, and to be honest, there's a lot of crossover between the two. There's the enormous flame-covered sword, the abundance of fire in general, and of course the guarding of a gated area filled with fruit trees. Who knew? But today we'll look in the good book instead of the SCP Wiki. Uriel, also known as the Angel of Repentance, is a pitiless hardline angel. There is no warmth or love in his heart, only thunder and terror. In fact, he's been compared to demons when it comes to his remorselessness. Yeah, so this is an angel you don't want to mess with. Now, if we look back to some of the earlier videos in this series, you'll recall a group of angels known as the Watchers, led by Shem-Hazai. These celestial beings defied God and went down to Earth to consort with humans, birthing horrible, enormous monsters. Uriel took one look at this and said, shut it down. Did he decide to eliminate the Watchers and teach the humans not to go against God? Was he able to see that humans were ignorant and therefore unable to be blamed? Was mercy ever even an option? Of course not. Uriel was the one to decide it was time to cleanse Earth, humans, Watchers, and all. So he was the one who began the cleansing flood featured in Noah's Ark, ridding the world of any presence he deemed impure. That is one cold-blooded angel, man. Coming in at number 2, we've got Bartleby and Loki. Oh, Kevin Smith, what were you thinking with this one? The 90s were just such a different time. Sometimes I look back and think that it all happened in an alternate universe or something. Nothing made any sense, but it all made perfect sense. God. So in 1999, Kevin Smith directed a movie called Dogma. Dogma was about two angels who were ejected from heaven and decided that they were going to exploit a loophole in Catholic dogma to make it back up there. If they were to succeed at this though, it would fly in the face of the idea of God being infallible and therefore undo all creation. Even the worst demon possible couldn't manage to annihilate everything that ever existed through creative use of a heavenly loophole. Oh, and also, these demons are played by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. That should tell you all you need to know. So these angels, now hanging out on Earth, get up to a whole lot of troublesome behavior. Somehow they manage to convince a nun to give up on religion wholesale. They shoot up an entire boardroom of business executives, although I suppose those guys could be considered sinners. Bartleby and Loki even spend most of their time on Earth beating up on people, threatening folks, and menacing mortals with assorted weapons. Why? Because they feel like they're mistreated in heaven. Gosh. In the end, Loki manages to become human once again and develops a bit of a conscience. However, Bartleby almost goes all the way through with his end the entire universe scheme. Who knew heavenly beings could be such jerks? Finally, at number 1, we've got the God's Hand Killer. Frailty? Such an underrated movie. And while the killer that we're discussing today isn't actually an angel, the implication is that they were sent by an angel to do away with demons. That kind of delusion, or not delusion, and the damage it can do makes it worth a mention for sure. In Frailty, we meet a father and his 2 sons. Papa claims that he was visited by an angel who tasked him with destroying demons wearing human skin. He makes sure that his kids are well versed in his demon-sighting ways and has them help with disposing of victims' bodies. Goodness gracious. One of the kids claims to share his vision, and their devotion to the cause becomes more apparent over time. I don't want to say too much about the movie because the devil is in the details, literally, so I'll leave it at that. An angel grants a seemingly insane man the divine right to kill demons disguised as humans, which might not be the best call from said celestial warrior. The fact that this killing spree extends out over multiple generations raises even more eyebrows. Coming in at number 5, we've got the cherubim. A mainstay in the home decor of grandmothers and churchgoers everywhere, folks tend to love cherubs. They've got chubby little cheeks, lovely little wings, and a whole lot of resemblance to babies. Unlike babies though, cherubs tend not to scream and cry and crap everywhere, which might actually be part of their appeal. But these angels are not as they seem. Sure, they gained quite a bit of popularity in art that depicts them as lovable little lads and lasses, but that's not really what they're supposed to look like. A lot less people would want to hang them in their homes if they actually resembled the way they're described in some texts. So their quasi-human form is about the only part they got right. Otherwise, cherubim are jam-packed with terrible features that would probably give kids nightmares. First off, they don't have just one face, they have 4. One of a human, one of a lion, one of an ox, and one of an eagle. That's a lot of freaky faces. Add in 4 wings and you've got a wild and crazy creature. But the basic appearance of these things is just the beginning. Those who behold the cherub might notice that it always appears as if it's on fire, you know, for reasons. And apparently they were often accompanied by another indecipherable being. A half-machine, half-creature full of whirling crystalline forms, these interlocking wheels stared down upon folks with hundreds of eyes that covered their entire bodies. Imagine that, being visited by an angel, and instead of seeing a calming, serene humanoid dressed in white, you're greeted by some awful chimeric abomination and its pet crystalline wheel. Insanity. No wonder folks who claim to have seen angels went nuts. Although I think it would be pretty wicked if grandmas started putting art up of these cherubs in their bathrooms. Coming at number 4, seraphim. Keeping with the theme of imps for a second, now we've got another order of angels that are a whole lot freakier than we often give them credit for. Seraphim are flying serpents. What else do I need to say, honestly? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that folks don't often associate flying snakes with angels, but here we are. These winged, wiggly forces are meant to hover above God's throne, singing about how excellent and divine and fantastic he is, which is all well and good, but just think about that for a second. Why would God, the Almighty, the creator of everything and all that is good, need a bunch of snakes to fly around literally singing his praises? It seems like they're doing their best to convince anybody who might hear of it. Who else needs a PR team running around making sure that everyone believes they're actually really good? In addition to their sketchy job descriptions, they're just plain weird looking. They fly around with 6 wings sprouting from their backs, 2 for their actual airborne maneuvers and 4 to cover their faces. Oh, and also their feet. Yes, these flying, praise-ridden snakes also have feet. So are they dragons, or do they just have like little feet dangling out by their tails? Unless you personally plan on meeting some angels, we may never know for sure, but that image is not a good one. In some writings on celestial hierarchy, the seraphim are described as such. The name seraphim clearly indicates their ceaseless and eternal revolution about divine principles, their heat and keenness, the exuberance of their intense, perpetual, tireless activity, and their elevative and energetic assimilation of those below, kindling them and firing them to their own heat, and wholly purifying them by a burning and all-consuming flame, and by the unhidden, unquenchable, changeless, radiant, and enlightening power, dispelling and destroying the shadows of darkness. So if you've ever found yourself influenced by the shadows of darkness, good luck. You know, demons tend to do their best to influence good people to do bad things, but they can, usually be resisted. Angels seem to just want to destroy anything that goes against their vision of holiness. Food for thought. Coming in number 3, we've got the Watchers. First of all, any organization known as the Watchers is going to be creepy. That's just creepy names 101. Second, you know Noah's Ark? The story of God telling his chosen dude that he's going to flood the whole world in order to hard reset all the sin that's accumulated? Well, the Watchers can essentially be blamed for all that sin. This group of angels managed to fly under God's radar for a while and made their way down to Earth. See, the Watchers saw some of the beautiful women on Earth and found themselves unable to really focus on anything else. Wanting to marry these mortals, the Watchers rebelled against the rest of heaven and went down to Earth to have a good time. While there, they lived hedonistic, overly sexual lives and taught humans secret knowledge too. It's said that the Watchers were the first to teach people about weapons, which obviously ended up in brutal violence. Also, the kids they had with human mothers turned out to be a little abnormal. You might be conjuring up images of Greek demigods right now, but that's not the case with Christianity. Instead, these human-angel hybrids turned into 1,000-foot tall abominations and started killing and eating people. They also forced humans into slavery in order to produce more food, which, good stuff. Way to go, Watchers. Very responsible. Teaching these lower beings about weapons and makeup and then breeding them to make ungodly abominations. In the end, though, God did take revenge and lock these angels away, but damn. Not even the devil could come up with a plot to so thoroughly f*** everything up. Coming at number 2, we've got Belial. If you're a fan of this channel, you've probably heard this name before. However, we don't usually talk about Belial in a biblical context. Now, we're talking about Basket Case, a classic. However, the surgically removed basket-dwelling monster got his name from this horrific angel. Fitting, especially when you realize what the original Belial got up to. Created right after Lucifer, he was one of the first angels to revolt against God, and that's just the start too. Belial led an army against Michael, resulting in untold amounts of carnage. Each army took 3 wins, and only during the 7th battle did God intervene because he wanted to make sure that Belial lost. For an angel to revolt against the others and then do unspeakable things against the others during battle, that takes a lot of power, and lots of terrifying evil too. Man, even the strongest from hell were once angels, eh? And coming in at number 1, we've got Raphael. To round it all out, let's discuss how even the holiest of forces are capable of the absolute cruelest of acts, like unimaginable torture that lasts lifetimes. I guess we already knew all that thanks to Dante's Inferno, but let's take a look at a very specific, pointed act of malice for a second. Raphael. Although he's not one of the named angels in the New Testament, he has become associated with healing and stirring the pool of Bethesda. However, just because he's associated with healing doesn't mean he can't bring the pain. Known for fighting the demon Azazel, he eventually triumphed over this force of evil. So what'd he do when he won? Did he banish the demon, purify its soul? Nope. He bound their hands and feet together, found a big hole in the desert full of rocks, and then cast the demon into this pit. Apparently, that demon waits there until the day of judgment, when he will then subsequently be cast into a pit of fire. Holy smokes, that is a hardcore punishment. I guess the demon deserved it in some way, but geez Louise, that's just gotta suck. Coming in number 5, we've got Armaros. Have you ever watched someone fall in love with the idea of something? Like a high schooler going head over heels for their crush without actually knowing all that much about them, let alone actually talking to them? Or maybe someone falling victim to the never meet your heroes cliche, where they develop some sort of parasocial relationship with someone and then find out what they're really like. I suppose this kind of thing happens even more than ever with the way people present themselves in online spaces, but it's been happening for ages. There's no avoiding the tragicomic classics when it comes to people and the stories they get caught up in. Although one would think that angels might know better. Enter Armaros. Sounds kind of like amorous, which kind of makes sense as I continue to explain what I'm talking about. This is an angel who is a friend of Enoch. One day Enoch came to hang with Armaros and began to describe what humans are like, their forms, the way they acted and reacted, the things they believed in, the works. And although Armaros had never met a human, he began to fall in love with them, or the idea of them. He, like so many other watchers, decided to descend to Earth in order to be with the humans. Whether this was out of pure love, or lust, or some combination of the two with many other factors, we may never know. But down he went, which was the beginning of the end. Given his name, which means accursed one, he was lost. Armaros' voice was taken from him as well, leaving him unable to pronounce words as he once did. And there he languished, no longer an angel, forced to live beneath the humans that had entranced and tempted him so. He is the angel of undoing and taught many things to the humans. He introduced them to methods used to counter magic users, and in doing so sped up the advancement of corrupt societies. Destruction was wrought through his lessons, and he made it so humans were even more prideful and powerful than before. All because he had heard about humans and dreamt up a version of them in his angelic head. So let this be a lesson to all of you chronically online folks out there. Project a bunch of stuff onto someone you don't know, and you could end up literally being cast out of your home and down into hell. Keep that in mind. Coming in number 4, we've got Tamiel. When a name shows up in multiple popular creepy TV shows, you can probably assume there's some spookiness to its owner. In the case of Tamiel, we can see why almost immediately. Featured in both The Walking Dead and Supernatural, this angel has some star power, and it doesn't stop at star power, he's got some crazy other powers too. He was once an angel up in heaven, of course, with all of the divine providence that comes along with that. However, that wasn't quite enough, and Tamiel made his way down to Earth and eventually to the underworld itself. There he became known as the Angel of the Unseen. Tamiel will take a human and put them into a dreamlike state where they remain for extended periods of time. In this dream, humans will experience their personal idea of heaven. Over thousands of years, this angel would do this to many different humans, often under the guise of another. He took on many different names during this process, slyly hiding his identity from those who may recognize him. The reason for these covert operations is largely unknown, but I'm sure you can fire some guesses down in the comments. It wasn't only dreamy heavens that Tamiel gave to humans though. He also taught them many things considered taboo at the time. Famed for his teachings of astrology, he gave humans the means with which to decode the stars above them and apply their movements to their lives. A little less popular, teaching the wicked strikes of spirits and demons to children. So if your kids are talking about how angels and demons are terrifying and maybe how they'd like to be just like them, you can blame this angel. He's also a teacher of the strikes of the embryo in the womb, and you can figure that one out on your own. So among Christians, he's got a lot of reasons to be unpopular. Overall, this is a very zealous teacher who is handing out knowledge that folks might not be super happy about in the long run. Plus, getting put into a dream coma might be nice for you, but it's probably not ideal for your immortal soul. Coming in number 3, we've got Penemu. Knowledge is power, that's for sure, but it can also cause plenty of problems, as we can see while looking at literally any point in history. And who can we blame for all of this? Why, Penemu, of course, the fallen scribe, angel of the written word, curer of stupidity in man and revealer of secret wisdom, a Prometheus in a different body. What an angel. It's too bad all these things didn't end up producing a net good for the world, or it could have been wicked. Oh well, you win some, you lose some. Penemu is another fallen angel who was once a watcher. Wanting to provide humans with all sorts of forbidden knowledge, they did just that. Descending to Earth with ink and paper in hand, Penemu taught people how to read and write, and while doing so purged a good deal of stupidity from the world. Unfortunately, the proliferation of written communication created an environment where stupidity could thrive if left unchecked. Should've saw that one coming. If all sorts of skilled and careful writers get together and discuss, new and useful ideas may be born. If essentially everyone on Earth has access to all of these writings and the ability to give their 10 cents, oh boy. So while the intentions were good, the execution wasn't so great. And the fallen angel Penemu doomed us to scrolling endlessly on Twitter, getting into arguments with distant family over Facebook, and of course, reading comments on YouTube. Coming in number 2, we've got the 5 Satans. Okay, this one seems weird to put in a top 5 list, but hear me out. There are 5 fallen angels who are said to have tempted their compatriots into feeling lust and desire towards humans. For this grave infraction, they will forever be known as the 5 Satans. Yekon, Asbiel, Gadriel, Kazde, and the previously mentioned Penemu were all responsible for this. In doing so, they doomed humanity to a horrible flood and split the heavens in twain. The angels who remained on the side of God fought against their brethren who went down to earth, and nothing has ever been the same. Each of the 5 Satans played their part in corrupting and swaying others away from their predetermined path, and in doing so, they truly earned their fallen angel titles. Condemned and sent down to hell, these 5 are full of hatred and temptation. And what a name for that group too, eh? 5 Satans. It's a pretty wicked way to be referred to. And finally at number 1 we've got Kokabiel. And one more for good measure, right? This fallen angel is known as the Angel of the Stars, which sounds lovely, right? And mostly it is. The thing about Kokabiel is that there is a divide as to whether he could be an angel or a demon. Could be a little bit of column A, could be a little bit of column B. Or maybe one and not the other. I don't know. That's what makes this potential demon so spooky. At any moment it could be revealed whether you can trust him or not, whether he has the order of the cosmos in mind while acting. Terrifying in its vagueness, that's for sure. If we're going to assume that Kokabiel did indeed fall though, we can see that he does indeed have control over some 365,000 spirits in the underworld. That's enough to drown really any other army, and we can probably assume that number's growing by the day. People die and disappear, but their spirits stay in the underworld forever. It's a little darker of a note than I anticipated, but we'll roll with it. Coming in number 5, we've got Abisu. Fallen angels tend to have pretty wild names, so we'll kick off with a good one. Abisu, Abisu, Abisu. Keep saying it, I swear nothing bad will happen. While some angels fall from heaven and just chill in the sacrilege paradise that is hell, some have higher hopes for sure. Good old Abisu is one of those with goals, aspirations, a day planner fully loaded with terrible tasks. After following Beelzebub in a grand exit from the Holy Land, he became quite an important demon in hell. Most hell dwellers choose to follow a certain demon or become part of a legion of some sort. This fallen angel has control over all sorts of imprisoned souls. Some say that this charge is both a privilege and a burden though, but I would imagine the same is true of all sorts of tasks in hell. There's much more to this demon though. He doesn't just remain in hell for all of eternity. In fact, there's a wild story about what Abisu got up to above ground. After falling from heaven, he roamed about Egypt, eventually causing a pharaoh's heart to harden. This act of evil inspired the pharaoh to pursue the fleeing Israelites, which ended poorly to say the least. This pursuit resulted in the pharaoh's army being crushed by the Red Sea. Abisu himself was imprisoned in a pillar of water and forced to uphold a pillar of air until a temple's completion. That has to do terrible things to one's mind, so I'm sure whenever this demon escapes, he'll be ready to wreak some vengeful havoc. You'll be able to recognize this angel turned demon rather quickly too. He has 2 differently colored wings. One is bright red. So if you ever come across an entity with 2 different colored wings, one being red, you can probably be pretty sure, reasonably so, that it is Abisu. Be careful and watch yourself, as he is the demon of pride, known to lead people astray. Coming in number 4, we've got Furfur. Don't be fooled by the somewhat silly name on this one. Furfur is to be feared. A great Earl of Hell, he commands 29 legions of demons that can compel all sorts of atrocities to happen. Take in that his name could be a corruption of the Latin word Furcifer, which means scoundrel. We love a good scoundrel around here, but be aware that when dealing with one face to face, he will almost always come away as the loser. He's been depicted as all sorts of different things, from an angel to a fox to a winged hart, which is essentially an older species of deer, plus wings of course. In those forms, Furfur has been known to trick and mislead people, as he is a pathological liar. The imagery of a tricky fox or deer has been used in myths and stories all across the world. Apparently, if you compel Furfur into a magical triangle though, he will revert to his true form and speak only the truth. Whether or not you want his scratchy demonic voice telling you truths is a matter of contention though. Trickery and shapeshifting are only the beginning of this entity's power. Furfur can force love between a man and woman, which often does not result in desirable outcomes. The actual method Furfur employs to make this false love happen is up in the air, but maybe double check your intentions if you find yourself falling in love in the woods. Furfur can also whip up destructive inclement weather. Enormous cracks of lightning, tremendously loud thunder, and storms with rain and wind that put monsoons to shame are all under his control. So don't make him mad, lest you end up struck by lightning or drowned in torrential rainfall. If you summon this fallen angel, he may impart some knowledge upon you. Often this knowledge is of divine things and meant to instill happiness. So even though he is known as a demon, he's not all that bad. There are benefits to having him around if you can manage to avoid these storms and potential forced love. Coming at number 3, we've got Adrammelech. Possibly an ex-angel, possibly a Sumerian sun god, Adrammelech is worshipped by people around the world who wish to offer up sacrifices in exchange for power and wealth. Here's a fun fact, not only is he a chieftain of hell, he's also got a whole bevy of other interesting hellish responsibilities. Firstly, he's the Great Chancellor of Demons, which is pretty neat. He's also president of the Devil's General Council. Who knew the demons were so democratic and well organized? But here's the kicker, my favorite fact about Adrammelech. He is the governor of the Devil's Wardrobe. Tell me you wouldn't want some fashion tips from the Devil's Wardrobe governor. Some seriously killer style on this dude. Probably has one of the original pairs of Satan shoes and everything. To ensure that he looks the part, he takes on the form of either a humanoid mule or a peacock. Or maybe sometimes he's a mule-peacock hybrid. All the above are probably true in some capacity. Be warned, even if you do encounter a fabulously dressed mule peacock man, he's not to be approached. He's described as an enemy of God, greater in ambition, guile, and mischief than Satan, a fiend more cursed, a deeper hypocrite. And we hear a lot of bad things about Satan all the time, so if Adrammelech is worse and more cursed than the big guy down there, then we're in for some trouble. Maybe that's why all those hardcore streetwear enthusiasts are so pure evil. They're just channeling Adrammelech. Coming in at number 2, we've got Andras. Now we're getting into some hardcore ones. Sure, we started with some fallen angels who might have a violent tendency or two or compel people to act in ways that contradict their morals, but that's all just part of life, right? Andras is straight up evil. He is powerful, deadly evil. The Grand Marquis of Hell, 63rd of the 72 Spirits of Solomon, and commanding 30 legions of demons. Boom. If Andros likes somebody, he teaches them to kill their enemies, masters, and servants. Yeah, all 3 categories. He is a bringer of bloodbath and brings them often. Nobody escapes when he's around. To make matters worse, he also gets a kick out of creating bad situations. Sowing discord among people is a chief interest, and trouble seems to follow him wherever he goes. It's hard to avoid him too, as he does take many forms and can really mess up your day if you're not ready. See, usually magicians look to summon Andros in order to gain some of his power, but he's not easily handled. He will often kill the very people who summoned him if they're not prepared for his arrival. Then he's just free to roam around with his owl head and crazy sword, murdering to his heart's content. Not great. Usually he looks sort of human, with an owl or raven head, riding a dark wolf. Very majestic, very cool, very dangerous. Seriously, watch yourself if you even catch a whiff of Andros activity. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Somebody told me he's got a devil set aside, but I'm not really sure what to make about that. There's also talk of Beelzebub being pretty wicked with the guitar and him stealing a whole lot of souls with it. This is all just hearsay, mind you, so take it with a grain of salt. However, the mythical Beelzebub, famous fallen angel, does have a lot written about him in religious and historical texts. His name means Lord of the Flies, and he rules over those nasty little buggers down in hell. A third fallen angel after Lucifer and Leviathan, Beelzebub has a lot of sway in the lake of fire. He's Lucifer's chief lieutenant and wears that title with pride. And speaking of pride, he's also the demon of pride. Also gluttony, also the prince of false gods. Witches love him, as they often mention him as an object of desire, and Beelzebub is a name that popped up quite a bit during the Salem witch trials.
Number 5, Nephilim. This one I can get behind for sure. How the pyramids were built still baffles me, and reading all about these things at least makes my brain relax for a second. The giants, the talls, the long neck people, the Nephilim. Again, never been a Bible guy myself, so no judgment if you say all this happened, but I'm just catching up on all this stuff. But in short, the Nephilim were like the offspring of angels and human women, according to Genesis 6:1-4 and Jude. The Nephilim are also mentioned in Numbers 13:33, but it is likely that by this time in Israel's history, Nephilim was used as a term for a tall, intimidating peoples. It's plausible that the Nephilim were both half angels and half giants, making them absolutely huge and absolutely super strong. The Nephilim were the children of the sons of gods and daughters of men, and Christian scholars have theorized that the sons of gods were actually these demonic fallen angels who reproduced with women. Being the offspring of partial angelic heredity, the Nephilim were considered mighty men who are of old the men of renown. The ancients. These people were huge, claiming that they were like 5 times the size of an average man. In the Hebrew Bible, a group of mysterious beings or people of unusually large size and length who lived both before and after the flood were called Nephilimus, sometimes translated to giants. Even the fallen ones, from the Hebrew nephil, meaning to fall. Seems like these people were writing about similar stuff, huh? Spooky. Number 4, 200 million horsemen. This next one is not really a creature as much as it's the end of a lot of all of us. All this Armageddon stuff they were saying, that's some pretty strange stuff that's on its way. Book of Revelation stuff, you know? Quote, I saw as God wanted to show me the horses and the men on them. The men had pieces of iron on their chests. These were red like fire and blue like the sky and yellow like sulfur. The heads of the horses looked like the heads of lions. Fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. 1/3 part of all man was killed by the fire and smoke and sulfur that came out of their mouths. Word for word. Horsemen or ancient biblical technology? This sounds horrifying. Also, 200 million? That's a lot of flying flaming horses just trucking around the skies and sands like giant tanks, firing fire out of their mouths and nose. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of all this came likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness. Okay. You put a Baja hoodie on me at a Dave Matthews concert and hear me saying all that stuff, you probably just think I'm some sci-fi stoner. Nope. This is riveting material, folks. I need to read this thing front to back. Apparently this force was supposed to have taken out, or is going to take out, 1/3 of the entire world's population. I know like 3 things that can do that. Pandemics, missiles, and floods. However, if men and horses showed up with lion heads breathing fire, it's safe to say it's game over. Number 3, the Leviathan. Okay, at first I was like, oh, that's a roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland. No, this vicious monster was actually modeled after this vicious monster. The Leviathan, the second of the great monsters described in the book of Job. This Leviathan, is an absolute massive sea monster who's impervious to human weapons, breathes fire, and emits smoke from his nostrils. So this is a Zelda boss for sure. The Leviathan is probably related to another ancient monster called Lotan, a 7-headed giant serpent who represents primeval chaos, as with pretty much every other biblical creature does. Hey, these things aren't meant to be cute and fuzzy. There's some less exciting theories that insist the Leviathan is just a dramatic interpretation of a crocodile or anaconda or maybe a plesiosaur, resembling something like the Loch Ness Monster. But that doesn't explain the breathing fire thing, or the size. Was this giant sea snake a water dragon? Because apparently it's like 300 miles long. Yeah, terrifying. Scary thing now is many different religions and cultures have their own version of the Leviathan. Tiamat, Hydra, Jormungandr. Maybe this thing was just hunted into extinction. I don't know. What do you think? Number 2, Archangel Michael. It is said that the angels are not humans, but creatures made from God's creation. I've also seen what the Bible describes angels looking like, and it's not handsome people with wings. Apparently a lot of these things, people really couldn't even describe what they were seeing in front of them. But we'll get to what these things look like in a minute. Of those creatures, Satan, aka Lucifer, is one. The one. However, here is even one creature that Satan fears more than any creature, and that's fellow Archangel Michael. Or Saint Michael. Some say they're brothers, some say they were on the same team for a bit. This is some good stuff, people. Quote, now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Revelation 12:7-9. Okay, so hold on. He and them are all down here with us? That's terrifying. Apparently Michael led that army that won, so whatever scares Satan scares the hell out of me as well. Also, all these pictures and statues of him and like window panes are all of him like wielding a giant sword made of light, just stepping on Satan's back as a hero. That's pretty intimidating, not gonna lie. And coming in at the number 1 spot, Ophanim. Okay, so what angels actually looked like apparently was like giant geometrical feathers with eyes and a consciousness. Some had horns, some had hooves, lots of golden metal colors. This next thing doesn't even make sense to my brain. I feel like this is an anthill trying to understand an iPhone. Quote, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparked like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel, intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures were faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. Ezekiel 1:15-18. First off, is this thing even a creature? Yeah, everything I see here is an alien. Is this just us trying to process some sort of like energy being with eyes? Because if I saw Lucifer that looks like the hunk on the Netflix show, and then I saw this thing, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls interprets them as angels. Late sections of the Book of Enoch interprets them as class of celestial beings who don't sleep and guard the throne of God. Whatever this thing or things are, it sounds and looks absolutely horrifying. How could you paint that on a ceiling? I would just give up and paint wings and a halo as well. For real though, like, that is a spaceship of some sort, isn't it? I mean, I understand the times, maybe the science wasn't there, but this thing is straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Number 5, the Legion. Now maybe this is a cheat to start off this list because this is technically supposed to be a top 5 list, but I think including this one might make it a top 500,000 list, roughly. This next demon is known as Legion, for it is many. The Legion's first appearance comes to us from the Gospel of Mark. That's a very early issue, so if you still have that, hold on to it, collector's value. Wherein Jesus Christ was wandering, encountering a young man who seemed to be possessed by a demon. When Jesus spoke to the man, he asked for the name of the demon inside him so he could exorcise him properly. And the demon spoke back and answered saying, Legion, for there were many devils inside him. As with any demon, this demon was driving its host to behave like an animal, trying to compel the man to sin, acting violently and aggressive. Now, JC exorcised the demon, and upon being exorcised, asked if it could be transferred to a herd of pigs to live out its demony days, to which Big JC obliged. Now, the Legion is pretty atypical when it comes to demons. It's not the prince of anything, or the embodiment of any one sin. The Legion, as the name might imply, is made up of countless individual little demons, all living inside one person like a big demon jamboree. There'd be so many demons inside you, there wouldn't even be any room for you. The Legion works like a demony hive mind, all moving together in unison. Sometimes Satan's armies are referred to as the legions of hell, but I guess the Legion is its own thing, which must make labeling pretty confusing. No one's exactly sure what sort of demons the Legion are, just that there's a lot of them working together in blissful demon harmony. As well, no one can really determine what the Legion is supposed to look like, but just know if you've ever seen a horde of literally anything, most likely would look like that, and not particularly pleasant. One demon is bad enough, let alone a couple 100,000 all in one place. That's just too many demons per square mile, square inch, square whatever measurement. Too many demons. And if you're looking for way more demons, if that's not enough demons for you, well, we've got stories of all kinds of horned beasts and snake-headed monsters and winged terrors on Top 5 Scary for you, and then some. If demons aren't your jam, we got ghosts, we got ghouls, we got goblins, we got conspiracies, we got anything scary you can think of. Hit subscribe, hit that little bell as well, and don't miss a single scream. But do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more demons coming up for you right now. Number 4, Belphegor. A demon who's had his heyday in pop culture. Maybe you recognize Belphegor from Supernatural's first fledgling season, all the way back when the boys were wide-eyed and hadn't even died once yet. Or maybe you're a big JRPG fan, maybe you're a Persona fan, and you recognize Belphegor as the perpetually bored demon on the can. And if you're like me, and you never stopped to ask why this enemy in a video game was a demon that was sitting on the toilet, maybe you just figured, hey, it's a video game, there's a talking cat, there's a dream world, you play as a teenager who has a healthy sleep schedule and a healthy social circle, it's not a realistic game, maybe you didn't think about it. But there's a reason for this foul demon's appearance. He's one of the 7 princes of hell, the demonic icon of sloth, and his favorite offering isn't blood, or a fresh goat, but a little mud pie. Feces, if you want to get technical. I'm not going to judge, and I'm not going to ask what he's doing with it. Old lore has it that if you wanted to summon Belphegor, you just had to bring him a lot of feces. There's no metric volume ever listed, just a lot. If you do summon him, he'll trade you wondrous riches, expand your ability to discover new things, but at the cost of the temptation of your mortal soul, and also you'll probably never have clean hands again. I'm sorry, I don't usually work so blue. It's the lazy man's comedy, although perhaps that's fitting for the demon prince of sloth. Now, Belphegor has been depicted in all manner of ways over the years. Sometimes he appears as these esoteric things like tree branches or takes the form of beautiful women. But one wood carving in the 18th century of him sitting on an 18th century toilet sealed his fate forever, and since then he has always been depicted as a horned demon on a porcelain throne. Belphegor, if you're watching this video, I want to make something clear. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just trying to make sense of this. What are you doing with that stuff? Where is it going? What are you doing with it? Number 3, Mammon. Hey, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting a little bit, right? It's nice to want, you know, we all want things. A little money, a little power, you know? Now, for most of us who weren't born into a Fortune 500 lineage, might be a little bit tricky, unless you've got a little bit of help. Maybe like from Mammon, the embodiment of human greed. You know, he's actually a lot more generous than his position as greed demon might suggest, you know? If you give over your eternal soul and pledge yourself to an eternity in his service, he might reward you with great riches. That's a pretty solid transaction. Mammon is thought to originate from an ancient word for wealth, and it's thought that this is where Mammon was first born from, was mankind's inherent desire for wealth and greed twisted out of subconscious want. Curse us for wanting. The Gospel of Luke and Matthew both directly quote, "You cannot serve both God and Mammon," meaning you can't have a pious life on a quest for massive wealth, and taken literally later to mean you can't also serve one of the 7 princes of hell and worship God. That kind of makes sense. Mammon is greedy, real greedy. It's said of all the archdukes and princes of hell, Mammon is more concerned with staring at the gold pavement than any of Lucifer's rebellion or business of the heavens, taken to mean that Mammon does not concern himself with anything that doesn't involve cold hard coin, baby. He's on that grind set 24/7. He's out there getting demon bags. Racks on racks on racks on racks. Now, the demon of greed has taken many forms over the years, most often looking like a fairly normal human sitting on a big golden throne looking down on those who would call for him. He's also been associated with a wolf and is believed to be able to take the form of one for dealing on Earth. It's said that part of the arcane ritual to evoke Mammon is to imagine your spirit as a golden wolf calling out to him. Now, if you do invoke Mammon, a little advice from me, just be sure you're being reasonable about this. You never know what happens if you get too greedy with a demon. Number 2, Beelzebub. Okay, the rest of these demons been small fries. Now we're getting into the big hitters. Beelzebub is thought to be one of the first angels to have ever fallen to hell, alongside Leviathan and Lucifer himself. He and Lucifer actually have a bit of an identity crisis, as the two are sometimes thought to be interchangeable. They got like similar haircuts, I think. Some demonologists, and yeah, there are people who call themselves demonologists, argue Beelzebub is another name for Lucifer. Some pose he's one of his most trusted lieutenants. No one can agree, but whatever he is pretty scary. His history is fairly interesting. It's thought that his namesake is a mockery of the ancient god Baal, a Bronze Age god of fertility. Some scholars believe Beelzebub's name comes from Baal-zebub, meaning Lord of the Flies, inferring that the followers of Baal are nothing more than flies worshipping a dung god. The Lord of the Flies sort of ended up becoming Beelzebub's de facto title, with almost all depictions of him featuring flies in ubiquitous amounts. Occasionally, he's even depicted as a giant fly. It's very Kafkaesque. Beelzebub is said to be one of the most powerful demons inside of Hell's domain, capable of great and control over humanity. Beelzebub was cited during the Salem witch trials as the entity that had corrupted and swayed so many women to witchery, so we have him to thank for goth girls, I guess. There's a bit of a discrepancy as to what sin Beelzebub is thought to preside over, with some offerings saying pride and some saying gluttony, but more often gluttony, which I think seems a little more fitting for flies. Anyway, I've never met a particularly proud fly. And number 1, Asmodeus. Now yes, it probably would have made a lot of sense to have Lucifer or Satan as the number 1 spot on this list. I mean, king of hell and all that. Let's give him an honorable mention. Let's give him a little clap. Let's give him a little equal attention. Yay, Satan. Hail Satan and all that. You're a great guy. Yeah. And let's say he's the number 0 spot, just because I thought it was a little too obvious, and I'm pretty sure most of you know who Satan is. And there's other demons to talk about. You know, I'm all about glowing up underrated demons, some of that, hidden talent. So filling in at the number 1 spot is Asmodeus, one of the princes of hell and the embodiment of the cardinal sin of lust. It's one of the best sins there is. Asmodeus fell from heaven along the other fallen angels, reforming as a prince of hell. Asmodeus is said to have been married to Lilith, the primordial she-demon, famed for her banishing from the Garden of Eden and for destroying Fraser Crane's life. Lilith was cursed and banished for her defilement and depicted as a temptress, and Asmodeus was like, I'm super into that stuff, Lilith. You want to procreate an endless stream of demons into the world and reign over a dominion of chaos? And the rest is wedded bliss. Now, depictions of Asmodeus vary pretty wildly. Occasionally he's a handsome fella, but most commonly he's depicted as a squat, vaguely humanoid creature with rooster legs, tail of a snake, 3 heads, a bull, a goat, and a scruffy demon head as the center. Asmodeus presides over lust with the help of his beloved Lilith. The two tempt humans with madness and desire to ruin people with lechery. Apparently this wasn't enough for him, as some stories also described Asmodeus as having command over the betting halls of hell and is responsible for tempting men's souls towards gambling. So what I'm hearing is that Asmodeus is in charge of lust and gambling, so he probably parties harder than absolutely anybody in hell. I don't know, sounds kind of cool. That's why he's at the #1 spot today.
Starting with number 5, we have Behemoth. No, not the ride at Canada's Wonderland. I'm talking about the mythological beast that dates back to the beginning of mankind, and whose name is now an adjective for any large or powerful being. The name Behemoth originated historically from the archaic Jewish name for hippopotamus, and is described as a beast from the biblical book of Job. He is a form of the primeval chaos monster created by God at the beginning of creation, being paired up with the other chaos monster Leviathan. And according to later Jewish tradition, both would become food for the righteous at the end time. Hey, if I wind up qualifying as righteous, can I have a funnel cake instead? Once again, not any kind of reference to the theme park. These beings came first, but now I'm kinda in the mood to tackle a roller coaster. Well, I've established that Behemoth was a brutish beast known for incredible strength. Legend says he was originally created to help stabilize the world, and is known to create chaos in humans' lives, just like my roommate. He is said to take the form of a colossally large elephant with pitch black eyes covered in white scales that appear to be falling off, and has teeth the size of Mount Everest. Yeah, that's a little too big for my liking. The direct quote from the book of Job that I mentioned earlier is as follows. 15 Behold Behemoth, which I made as I made you, he eats grass like an ox. 16 Behold, his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. 17 He makes his tail stiff like a cedar, the sinews of his thighs are knit together. 18 His bones are tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron. 19 He is the first of the works of God, let him who made him bring near his sword. 20 For the mountains yield food for him where all the wild beasts play. 21 Under the lotus plants he lies, in the shelter of the reeds and in the marsh. 22 For his shade, the lotus trees cover him, the willows of the brook surround him. 23 Behold, if the river is turbulent, he is not frightened, he is confident through Jordan rushes against his mouth. 24 Can one take him by his eyes, or pierce his nose with a snare? Behemoth and Leviathan make an appearance in Revelation 13 as they try to fight against God and can be only slain by God. Thessalonians 2:8, Revelation 19:19-20, both these beasts are extremely strong, unruly, and untamable in nature. In Revelation 13:11-12, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns, like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. 12, he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. And that's enough Bible babble for right now. In 4th place, we have Vine, an Earl and King of Hell. This Earl commands a simple 36 legions of demons. Because I know y'all are gonna make me do the math for this one, a legion is anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 demons. So roughly between 108 to 216,000 demons. Where's my gold star for calculating that? And how are there so many demons? The significance of his name seems to be from the Latin word vinea, vine, which is also the name given to an ancient war machine made of wood and covered with leather and branches, used to overthrow walls. In terms of his appearance, once summoned, he will show up resembling a lion and holding a viper in his hands. Now, I don't do well with snakes, so if you request him to change said appearance, he will present in human form, with long black hair, black wings, and now holding a golden cane. I know there's people out there who might be attracted to this, present company included, but don't take that as encouragement to summon him. Known as one of the most difficult demons to summon and work with. He is also one of the only demons who can identify witches and warlocks without being previously informed about their abilities, along with having the ability to tell the past and future, which I can see is kind of tempting. Vine is insensitive to humanity and cares little for harming those who summon him, making him wildly unpredictable and dangerous to summon, along with having the power to take souls without requiring permission. I repeat, dangerous. Right in the middle of the pack, in third place, we have Pazuzu. If your first response was to say bless you, we have the same sense of humor. You may be familiar with references made to him in The Exorcist and the House of Ashes video game, but we're not talking about Linda Blair's acting today. As an apotropaic entity, he was considered both a destructive and dangerous wind, but also a repellent to other demons, one who might safeguard the home from their influence if he was in the right mood. Remember, if he was in the right mood. Kinda like me sometimes. He is quoted as introducing himself by stating, "I am Pazuzu, son of Anubu, king of the evil Lilu demons. I was enraged in violent motion against the strong mountains and ascended them." Lilu demons are the class to which Pazuzu and his leagues of demons belong. There is also a notable connection to the earlier Babylonian personifications of the four winds. These beings, as depicted on several cylinder seals, have wings, and each represents a different direction of the north, south, east, and west winds. It's important to note that noted professor of ancient studies, Franz Wigerman, calls attention to the crooked positioning of the masculine west wind in seals. Franz Wigerman calls attention to the crooked positioning of the masculine west wind in seals, which is similar to the posture in Pazuzu's physical depiction. More connections appear in later seals, as this same bent-over figure takes on talons and a scorpion's tail. The main difference in their depictions is the head, and the conclusion was made that it is Pazuzu's body and not his head that denotes him as a wind demon. Another scholar, Scott Neweagle, asserts that Pazuzu's possession of four wings links to the term kipatu, meaning circle, loop, circumference, and totality, suggesting his control over all cardinal directions of wind was inherited from his predecessors. Pazuzu was often depicted with a man's body, the head of a lion or a dog, talons for feet, two pairs of wings, a scorpion's tail, and a serpentine phallus. Around now you might be thinking, Pazuzu is a long name, he has to have some sort of a, nickname or other moniker, right? Sure. He's been called the agony of mankind, suffering of mankind, or disease of mankind. Take your pick. This god of wind and plague is known as Lucifer's right-hand man and has the power to control and rule over other evil spirits, being known to bring forth droughts and famine. It is said that he conspired with Lucifer to overthrow God, and they were thrown out of heaven together. He is fond of corrupting the innocent and good, being known to offer help that appears good and benevolent, but actually requires recipients to request more of his assistance, sending them further and further into his debt, sentencing them to an afterlife of eternal agony. See, reality is agony enough, so I'll pass. Our runner-up for today is Sergat, first mentioned in history in 1517, whose deceptive and cunning mind make him one of the most tricky demons you could possibly think of summoning. Due to his name, he is associated closely with Saturdays. Sure, he might be the least known demon on this list, lacking the background detail that emphasizes the other demons, but he is still very much to be feared. He is known as the one who can open all locks, which may seem a little silly on the surface level, but once summoned, he is impossible to escape or to conceal yourself from unless it's on his terms. Targets of Sergat are relentlessly pursued until found, and then presented with imagery until they go mad. He was the last demon to be summoned by known demon hunter and documentarist Pope Honorarius in his grimoire. Honorarius had thoroughly documented the strengths and weaknesses of every demon he summoned during his research into the oncoming War Against Demons, but had only written ability to open locks about Sergat before his untimely death, leaving history to believe Sergat was responsible for this event. Now, I'm not going to spell out how to summon him, because I hope I've made it clear enough by now that I exist to discourage that kind of behavior, but I did find it kind of neat that one would need a nail from an old coffin to do so. Oh, and before I forget, Sergat is invisible when he manifests, making him easy to lose track of. And in first place, we have Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, Lord of Dung, and God of Filth himself. He is described visually as a small and hunched over creature with red or purple skin, ram horns, a forked tongue, and a long tail, along with incredibly powerful wings. Kinda sounds like a D&D character. He often prefers to appear as a fly when summoned, which may sound innocent until you consult history. Flies were believed to have been born from rotting flesh and plagues. According to Christian beliefs, he began his career as a false god, convincing men to worship him and trick them, so he could give faulty advice that would harm instead of helping those in need. Before in the comments asks for a Bible citation, since I haven't been including them for all of the listings today, I'll mention it now. In Mark 3:22, the scribes accused Jesus Christ of driving out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. The name also appears in the expanded version in Matthew 12:24, 27, and Luke 11:15, 18, 19, as well as in Matthew 10:25. Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your people drive them out? So then they will be your judges. But if I drive out demons by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you." Funny. Hanging around this spooky stuff has me quoting the Bible more than I ever thought I would in my lifetime. Guess I should have paid more attention in my middle school religion classes, or when I was altar serving as a kid, instead of just figuring out the perfect angle to tip a candle at to splash wax on my arm. What? I never said I was a normal kid. Beelzebub is commonly described as placed high in hell's hierarchy. According to the stories of the 16th century occultist Johann Weyer, Beelzebub led a successful revolt against the devil, is the chief lieutenant officer of Lucifer, the emperor of hell, and presides over the Order of the Fly. And I thought I was a workaholic. The 17th century exorcist Sébastien Michaelis, in his admirable history, placed Beelzebub among the three most prominent fallen angels, the other two being Lucifer and Leviathan. John Milton, in his epic poem Paradise Lost, published in 1667, identified the unholy trinity of Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Astaroth, with Beelzebub as the second ranking of the many fallen angels, a quote from him claiming, "Satan except none high or sad." In simple English, only second place is Satan here. His specialty is in tormenting mankind, causing wars, instigating murders, and known for his ability to place humans under the spell of other demons upon request. One thing historians haven't been able to settle on is which major sin he represents, with some claiming pride, others gluttony, but also some claim idolatry. Personally, since he allegedly originated from being a false god, I'm going to side with idolatry. But let me know in the comments which one you believe.
Coming at number 5, we've got Leviathan. Often associated with adjectives like aquatic and enormous, Leviathan is a word we often hear outside of the context of angels. It's a concept at this point. If something is a Leviathan, it's an enormous sea monster, ready to swallow entire ships whole, prepared to annihilate fleets of submarines, waiting for its chance to appear in a monster movie. But here's the thing, Leviathan isn't just some monstrous figure in the ocean, nor is it simply a huge roller coaster in Vaughn. Leviathan is also a demonic angel. Damn, that's a badass title. Let me tell you some more. The sea monster reputation is well earned, as Leviathan often appears or is described as an enormous sea monster or a gigantic whale. Oftentimes he will destroy ships and other vessels that dare to cross the open sea. Poor sailors, am I right? A lot of folks do end up mixing him up with Behemoth, but we'll let it be for now. There's another roller coaster joke in there somewhere, but I don't have it in me to make it. Leviathan makes appearances throughout ancient texts, from showing up and being described as a Lovecraftian beast with the mere sight of it being overpowering, to a whale that traps another famous character in its belly for 3 days. That first one also details Leviathan's enormous horrible teeth and a back covered in shiny shield-like scales. That's not all either. Apparently Leviathan can breathe fire, throws smoke from his nostrils, and has eyes that shine so bright they can blind you. My word, that is an incredible biblical beast. And somehow, some way, he's still considered an angel. What a world we live in, right? Then of course there's the tale of Jonah and the whale, and in this case, Leviathan could very well be that whale. We've seen him described as the enormous underwater individual before, so it fits quite well if you think about it. Overall, this is an angel that nobody wants to encounter, even on a good day. Gigantic, predatory, powerful, and full of folks it ate, Leviathan is crazy. It's for the best that it stays deep underwater, away from everyone else. Coming at number 4, we've got Chokidri. Now, instead of listing off 5 specific individual angels, we'll bring in a new group for this one, the Chokidri. Sounds kind of funny, but they're serious business. In some of our earlier angelic videos this year, we discussed the classifications of angels a little bit and found out about all sorts of interesting creatures. Gone was the idea that angels had to be glorious humanoid figures descending from above the clouds to play beautiful tunes upon harps. Angels could be chimeric abominations, too hideous for humans to lay eyes upon. That is just the case with the Chokidri. Oh yeah. To kick it off, let's talk about where these things live. Not in the heavens or above the clouds or anything like that. The Chokidri are so much more hardcore than that. These angels have decided to take up residence in the sun. You know, the enormous ball of fire in outer space that burns bright enough to warm our entire planet from 150 million kilometers away? Yeah, they live there. I'm sure their tans are immaculate. Described as marvelous and wonderful, or in my words, overwhelming and intense, these angels take on very interesting forms. Their feet and tails are like that of a lion, offering up claws and speed unlike most others. Something, everything the light touches is ours, right, Simba? Well, that's only partially true, because the Chakidri also have heads like crocodiles, adding in a new measure of deadliness previously unheard of. They're 900 measures in size, whatever that means, and have 12 angelic wings. And for some reason, they seem to be rainbow colored. So a Technicolor lion-crocodile combo with angel wings pops out of the sun from time to time to bring heat, dew, and rays to the folks on Earth. You know what? Maybe they're not so bad after all. Coming in at number 3, we've got Belphegor. And we're back to individual powerful angels. This one in particular is a well-known fallen angel, which tends to be the case a lot of the time. Belphegor is associated with plenty of sinful behaviors. There's greed, sloth, discord, selfishness, and more. Although, let's be real, sloth and greed are the biggest in his books. He likes to give mortals great ideas for inventions, therefore filling their minds with selfish greed. They'll devote great parts of their lives to these plans, forgetting all sorts of other important things. And often, if these inventions come to fruition, they don't actually improve the state of the world all that much. Yeah, it's mostly stuff that extracts more wealth from the world in the laziest and most destructive way possible. Then the inventions will also draw their users into sloth, as they make things a little too easy. Classic Belphegor. Interestingly enough, this isn't a fallen angel who was on Lucifer's side from the start. However, when Lucifer and his supporters staged their rebellion against the heavens, Belphegor didn't explicitly side with God either. For this slight, he was inevitably sent down to hell anyways. Damn, you just can't win, eh? However, as we've seen, he's adjusted quite well. After his fall, he took to being a prince of hell quickly and started doing his best to preside over sloth. At least he's adaptable. Coming in at number 2, we've got Mastema. Known for his judgments and punishments of humans, Mastema is one scary angel. He's an arbiter, and you do well not to forget that. If Mastema gets the chance, he'll put you 6 feet under for eternity. Worse yet, he treats his whole job like a sting operation. Instead of sitting back and waiting for humans to do unholy things, he actively tempts mankind with all sorts of stuff to make them act out of turn. That's tough, huh? Like, you'd think you're living your life and then bam, Mastema tempting you with something lovely but sinful. It just doesn't seem fair, does it? But that is what this angel does, and he does it well. Some say that Mastema and Belial are the same entity, just seen from different angles, Belial being the more demonic and Mastema being more angelic. However, their actions are indeed the same, or mostly similar, from leading some of God's armies against angels, to controlling legions of demons to control and tempt humans on Earth. It's even said that Mastema was involved with the Watchers, who ended up causing that massive flood way back when. You know the story. So now Mastema is known as the tester of humans. Even after all of that chaos and mayhem, he's still trusted to do things in the name of God. And I'm not sure which is worse, damning people in the name of Satan or damning people in the name of God. I'd much rather an angel try to help people be better rather than entrapping them and seeing to it that they're sent to hell. But hey, I don't claim to understand how angels work. And finally, at number 1, we've got Lucifer. If we were to tally up every list that Lucifer topped, what do you think the final count would be? It's probably a lot higher than I'm estimating, to be honest. But hey, it's not like his spot at the top is undeserved, right? Lucifer worked hard to earn the recognition of people around the world. Hell, there's even a popular TV series featuring this fallen angel. If you can think of a more famous or more fearsome angel than this, please let me know. But until then, we're putting Mr. L right at the tippy top, over and over again. You know the story. Lucifer was an angel without peer. Nobody could stop him. He was the ultimate in heavenly hunks. But then one day he let his pride take over. Instead of being happy that he was the creme de la creme of angels, he thought about usurping God himself. Wrong move, yeah? After organizing something like 1/3 of all the angels in heaven for an uprising, they got beat by the remaining heavenly bodies and sent down to the underworld. So much hope, so much pride, so little execution. Since then, Lucifer / Satan / the devil has been watching over hell, doing what he can to bring order to the chaos. Someday he may rise up and take revenge upon those who smote him. Until then, though, he's responsible for a whole lot of human folly. Goodness gracious. Coming in number 5, we've got Uriel. Not to be confused with the top tier hand sanitizer, although I wouldn't be too mad if you made that mistake. This angel does a similar job to the alcohol-based cleaning solution. He purifies and eliminates all sorts of unsavory things. Whether or not that's 99%, I can't be sure, but here we are anyway. His job is one that not many would really want to do. Uriel is the angel of punishment. One would think that once you made it to heaven, there wouldn't really be a need for that kind of thing, but apparently we're wrong. He watches over the prison in heaven, acting as the warden. Who knew? He's also responsible for examining each and every soul that makes it up to heaven after dying. During this spot check, he makes sure that the soul is pure enough to be allowed to pass through. Kind of like a TSA check at the airport, but somehow more invasive. Instead of checking your passport and your luggage and making assumptions based on your appearance and background, they're instead reaching into the depths of your soul. Talk about a cavity search, am I right? If you are fit to enter heaven, he will let you pass, although I'm not so sure you'll be the same person after an experience like that. Fail the test, and out you go. Down to hell or possibly purgatory to cavort with all sorts of other unworthy individuals. Damn, so close too. Uriel is known for being fiery and pitiless too, so don't count on just barely squeezing by. If he doesn't like what he sees, he's gonna drop you from the clouds faster than you can say bless you. Dang. Maybe he does have a lot in common with Uriel. I'm sure he eliminates 99% of potential heavenly residents. I wonder if that could have any long-term implications like hand sanitizer and antibiotics do, you know, by leaving some of the stronger, unsavory bits untouched so that they get stronger and no longer be purified by that regular dose. Super bacteria, here we come. Oh man, did I just compare me and the others unworthy of heaven to bacteria? Gotta work on that self-esteem. Coming in number 4, we've got Tamiel. Dangerously close to Sin Kiel, this is another remorseless, unrepentant angel. Do not put yourself in her sights lest you be utterly annihilated in seconds flat. One has to wonder how an angel becomes the chief of destruction, although I wouldn't recommend asking Tamiel anything about it. She's likely to just cash in on that title in the wildest way possible. Destruction. In addition to her first title, she also is known as the Angel of Vengeance, which works well with those predetermined traits. Destructive and vengeful seem to go hand in hand quite well. Claim revenge through destruction, destroy upon the path of vengeance. What an angel. Tamiel does spend a good amount of time in heaven commanding other angels, but will often be called down to earth to chastise and purify sinners. Most folks have a hard enough time being chastised by their teachers and employers. Imagine a literal angel from heaven dropping in to give you an earful. My word. Plus, the way most angels purify sinners isn't pleasant. It's not just radiant light zapping you to righteousness in the same way a UV light might disinfect buffet food. You're probably getting smoten. Straight to hell with your sinful ass. She doesn't always work alone either. Many lesser angels receive Tamiel's orders and follow them with fervor. A whole platoon of vengeful, destructive angels on the lookout for sinners and sinner adjacents. I don't know about you folks watching at home, but I don't think too many righteous and pious people are watching top 5 scary videos. So Tamiel should be on our list of folks to avoid at all costs, as if we could even avoid her in the first place. Oh well, I guess there's only so much you can control in life. Might as well get cleansed by the good guys in the end, right? Coming in number 3, we've got Anciel. Working closely with Tamiel, Anciel is another tough cookie straight out of the clouds. With a name meaning the constrainer, one can assume that nothing good comes from being constrained. Images of prison, the inability to move, and possibly even Stockholm Syndrome are evoked, are they not? All that being said, it's tough to think that an angel who makes regular use of constraints is anyone's safe haven, unless you're a regular on a smutty roleplay blog, and in that case, you do you. Anciel isn't all that bad though. He's often invoked to prevent forgetfulness and stupidity, which, to be honest, we could all use a hand with from time to time. However, if someone were to rely on angelic intervention regularly to keep them in line, well, what hope did they even have in the first place? Apparently Anciel is known for having a very short temper when it comes to these two traits, however, so those who need his help the most are likely to be held in contempt by him. Maybe find a new job, right? Humorless and hard to get along with, Anciel is an excellent soldier. In fact, he's one of Michael's greatest warriors, which means if anyone is ever to step to him, things will end very badly for them. Watch out and try to keep tabs on stuff you're supposed to remember. If you fail at this, you could find yourself restrained, constrained, and in Anciel's bad books. Coming at number 2, we've got Gabriel. Now we're talking about the big ones, the archangels. Gabriel in particular can be a real pain to deal with. The youngest of the archangels, he is known as the messenger of God. He heralds major changes and brings news from the heavens. So if you run into Gabriel, you can be assured that something monumental is about to happen. You'd better listen closely though, because he doesn't suffer fools. In fact, if he senses that you're not paying close enough attention, he might just silence you forever. That's almost what happened to Zechariah. When Gabriel descended to announce the birth of John the Baptist, Zechariah initially reacted poorly. Seeing this, Gabriel got angry. So angry that he threatened to take away Zechariah's voice. He said, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and bring this good news. But now, because you did not believe my words, you will become mute, unable to speak until the day these things occur." Man, I can only imagine what happens when he gets into an actual argument with someone. For a being with divine powers, he sure has a short temper. Plus, as God's messenger, Gabriel is going to be the first to show up if God ever decides to call this all quits. It's more likely than you think, too. Humans are sinful and often turn to other forces these days, and in so many movies, Gabriel is the big bad guy who causes all sorts of problems for humanity. When you're the first angel to show up, you'd better believe you're going to catch a lot of folks off guard. And finally, at number 1, we've got Michael. To cap off our list, the head archangel himself. He's the one powerful enough to push Lucifer out of heaven. He's the one strong enough to end the angelic war. He's the one righteous enough to prevent Tamiel from tearing a baby from its mother's womb. Nothing can stop Michael save for God himself, so why would he be on this list? Well, that kind of unchecked power can never be good, now can it? As the most powerful angel in creation, he has control over all of the other angels. God leaves him in his stead to rule over the kingdom of heaven, and if Michael were to ever change things up, it's unlikely that anyone would be able to do anything about it. If Michael looks down and deems our world unworthy, we're done for. Game over. The book of Revelation will come to fruition and all mortals will suffer before being cleansed from the earth.
In at 5, Aquiel. Now there is very little known about Aquiel, but what we know is that he is the demon who presides over Sundays and exists within Christian mythology. His purpose is to destroy and degrade the practice of keeping the Sabbath holy, which might not sound absolutely terrible, but if this dude possesses the wrong person, it could be bad news bears for all of us. Imagine the president, a prime minister, even one senator possessed, and suddenly we have to work 7 days a week without a single day off. Yeah. Okay, it's a stretch, but there's a reason he is at our number 5. Honestly, no one wants to work long weekends. Just saying. Also, apologies in advance if I pronounce all these names wrong. I'm not a demon. Shh. In at 4, Sergat. Now, Sergat is a minor demon referenced in the grimoire of Pope Honorius, but this does not diminish the fact that he is straight up evil. He is listed as, I quote, Sergat who opens all locks, and his opposite is actually our previous number, Aquiel. So before we even get into this demon, we should discuss how many demons are actually mentioned in the Great Grimoire of Honorius. Who was he? Historians aren't even sure, but they do think that he was Honorius III, who was the Pope from 1216 to 1227. Now, no one is quite sure if he wrote the book or not, but he is famous among popes for deliberately conducting ceremonies to summon demons so he could banish the demons back down to hell. A little odd. This dude does not mess around. Now, how does Sergat come into play? Well, as previously mentioned, he makes appearances in the Grimoire of Honorius, and he is incredibly deceptive and cunning, making him one of the most terrifying demons throughout history. And in the Bible. Yeah, he's there too. Now, as quoted before, this dude is known as the one who opens all locks, which essentially means he is capable of understanding and opening any and all locks in the entire world, making it almost impossible to escape him or conceal yourself from him. When someone becomes Sergat's target, he relentlessly pursues them no matter how hard they try to escape, and once he reaches his victims, he frightens them by presenting them with images that result in them going mad. Yikes, don't summon this bad boy. In at 3, Agarus. Agarus is a demon described in demonological grimoires as a duke. Under the power of the East, an old man riding upon a crocodile and carrying a hawk on his fist. Agarus is known to teach languages, however he also stops and retrieves runaways, causes earthquakes and grants noble titles. Now I shouldn't technically be saying he, because Agarus can be a man or a woman. If the demon is a man, the man is old and riding said crocodile. If the demon is a woman, she is young and angelically beautiful. Now it's surprising how many demons are teachers. They instruct those they visit or possess, and grant knowledge and power, so I guess it's not all bad. The exorcists seem to miss out that little nugget of information. Now, although this demon is downright evil, he or she will grant you the knowledge of every language in the world. However, the bad news, he or she will only teach you the foulest and most offensive words, so say bye bye to your friends, I guess. Yeah, you'll be educated, but you will be vile beyond belief. So you'll be me. In at 2, Renove. In demonology, Renove is described as a Marquis and the Great Earl of Hell, hence why he is number 2 on our list. This dude commands 20 legions of demons, making him one of the most notorious demons throughout history, one that you certainly don't want to be messing around with. Now, what makes him quite the enigma is that yes, he's awful, the worst, but he's also somewhat of a scholar. He teaches art, rhetoric languages, and gives loyal servants the favour of friends and foes. Now, you may be familiar with this demon, as he is the one who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is horrible enough, but what makes this demon truly terrible is that he is the taker of old souls. Basically, this means anyone who is older looking, or looks a little under the weather, Renove will claim them. Also, pets are not immune to this. He will kill them too. Your best option is just to steer clear of all your elderly relatives, and consider getting a new, younger looking pet. Just saying, they gotta go. And finally, coming in at number 1, Baphomet. This name may ring a bell for you, and that's because Baphomet is a deity that the Knights Templar were falsely accused of worshipping, following which time it was subsequently incorporated into occult and mystical traditions throughout history. It first appeared in trial transcripts for the Inquisition of the Knights Templar beginning in 1307, which resulted in it being popularized in the English language in the 19th century during debate and speculation on the reasons for the suppression of the Templars. The appearance of Baphomet is that of a goat, an image drawn by Eliphas Levi, which contains binary elements representing the sum total of the universe. More interesting still, this picture of Baphomet is often used as a stand-in for Satan by Satanists and Christians alike. Now, it is a highly debated topic about whether this demon was truly good or bad, but if we look to historical accounts, Baphomet comes from a letter written by a French crusader in 1098. He describes the crusaders' enemies in the Holy Land, I quote, calling upon Baphomet prior to battle. Baphomet refers to Muhammad, the prophet. European Christian dogma viewed the worship of Muhammad as idolatry, which was harnessed by a medieval European ruler in the form of a witch hunt targeting his political opponents. In at 5, Mammon. In the New Testament of the Bible, Mammon is a fallen angel. His name is thought to mean money, material wealth, or any entity that promises wealth. He's essentially the embodiment of the cardinal sin, greed. Sounds like a swell guy. He is associated with the greedy pursuit of gain. I quote, "You cannot serve both God and Mammon." He is often personified as a deity and is included amongst the 7 princes of hell. According to some readings, he is the son of Lucifer himself, conceived before his father fell from heaven and born after he was sent to hell. Before his fall from grace, I quote, "He was more interested in heaven's golden pavement than its celestial leader. From the underworld he comes up with schemes to manipulate humans into adding to his fortune. He is supposedly so powerful that innocent humans can be corrupted by him, adding to his treasures and fortunes instead of virtues that they can carry up to heaven." In at 4, Abaddon. Abaddon is known as the angel of the bottomless pit, one of the many fallen angels we have on our list. In the New Testament book of Revelation, they are described as the king of an army of locusts, as well as Destroyer, the angel of the abyss. As the king of locusts, he has an army resembling horses with crowned human faces, women's hair, lion's teeth, wings, iron breastplates, and a scorpion stinger. Nasty. Many believe Abaddon to be the Antichrist, but others identify him as the angel as Satan. According to Revelation 9:1-11, after the 5th angel sounds his trumpet, a star falls from heaven and opens the bottomless pit. As a storm of smoke arises, and from the smoke a plague of locusts emerge to torment, but not kill, men who lack the seal of God on their foreheads for 5 months. His origin gets a little hazy, making him appear to be the servant of God, yet also a servant of Satan. Guess it's up to you what you believe. In at 3, Belphegor. Belphegor, along with a few other numbers on our list, is a demon and one of the 7 princes of hell. His powers are of seduction, seducing people with money and inventions, promising endless riches. His role as a demon is to turn humans against each other through means of wealth. He uses our gluttonous desires to drive man to evil, promising fortune in the end. Other reports label him as Hell's ambassador to France. Odd title. And his adversary is Saint Mary Magdalene, one of the patron saints of France. His origin is that of a fallen angel and a false god that Moses handed down the death penalty for worshipping. He was dispatched to earth by Satan to deceive mortals, often taking the form of a beautiful woman, typically naked. Although sometimes he can appear as a demon, sporting leathery flesh, horns, sharp teeth, and a gaping mouth, ready to destroy mankind. In at 2, Beelzebub. Identified in the New Testament, Beelzebub is the prince of demons demons. He holds a high position in Hell's hierarchy and supposedly led a successful revolt against the devil. He is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer, the emperor of Hell, and is often placed among the three most prominent fallen angels, the others being Lucifer and Leviathan. He is capable of flying, which is the worst, and is known as the Lord of the Fires or the Lord of the Flies. Beelzebub is rumored to be responsible for many demonic possessions throughout history. One of the most famous is the possession of Anneliese Michael, a teenager who was diagnosed with epilepsy before a number of exorcisms were later performed, eventually resulting in her death. Beelzebub was also believed to be sowing his influence in Salem, Massachusetts. His name was repeatedly mentioned during the Salem witch trials. And finally, in at number 1, Lucifer. In classical mythology, Lucifer, meaning the bringer of light, was the name of the planet Venus, though in many cases Lucifer was represented as a winged child pouring light from a jar, or even a man bearing a torch. Now in Christianity, as we know, Lucifer became so obsessed with his own beauty and intelligence that he began to desire the honor and power that belonged to God, corrupting him and forcing God to cast him down to the underworld. It is also noted that once he was cast down, he changed his name from Lucifer to Satan, meaning adversary, and following the second coming of Christ, he was bound to the pits of hell during the 1,000-year millennial kingdom over which Christ ruled. All in all, Satan is widely known as the devil himself, an evil entity that seduces humans into sin. He possesses power over the fallen world and a host of various demons. In Judaism, Satan is regarded as an agent subservient to God. There is no answer to whether Lucifer and Satan are two separate entities or whether Lucifer's fall from heaven created Satan, but an examination of several passages reveals that he can be none other than Satan, the devil himself. Coming in at number 5, we have Belphegor. In Christian demonology, Belphegor is a bit of an interesting character. According to Peter Binsfield's classification of demons, he is the chief of demon of the deadly sin, sloth. This lazy demon uses his sluggish nature to tempt people into greediness and selfishness. When summoned, this demon is said to grant riches, the power of discovery and profitable invention. St. Thomas Aquinas pushed this deadly sin further and felt that sloth was the root of many evils, including ignorance. This fearsome demon, sometimes known as Hell's ambassador, has taken on many different forms throughout history and in various ideologies. In some schools of thought, Belphegor is considered one of the 7 princes of hell. Alongside him are Lucifer, Beelzebub, Mammon, Leviathan, Asmodeus, and Satan. Most commonly, Belphegor is depicted as horned beast with a long beard and sharp pointed nails. He's often associated with masculine symbols that are phallic in nature, if you catch my drift. Conversely, he sometimes appears as a young girl or a beautiful naked woman. Perhaps the most disturbing legend attached to the demon, also referred to as the Lord of the Openings, is his very unusual sacrificial preferences. Not to kink shame, but apparently he prefers his sacrifices in the form of excrements. Coming in at number 4 is Furfur, a great Earl of Jinnistan and the ruler of 29 legions of demons. According to the Lesser Key of Solomon, a grimoire in demonology, Furfur is the 34th of the 72 spirits of Solomon and a compulsive liar. The only way to get the truth out of this mischievous demon is by entering him into a magic triangle, and he'll truthfully answer your questions. His voice is hoarse and will deliver divine truths while summoned into a triangle. Outside of it, you cannot trust anything he speaks, should he decide to speak at all. He's very powerful and known for creating massive storms with thunder and lightning, raising great winds and creating big blasts. Furfur is actually covered in fur, appearing as a winged stag with great antlers and a flaming tail. In some depictions, he appears as a man or an angel when compelled to enter a magic triangle. His name directly translates to brand in Latin, however it's likely that his name is corruption of Furcifer. It sounds a lot like the name Lucifer, but it's just the Latin word for scoundrel. Furcifer, what a name. In at number 3 we have Mammon. This demon is so bad his name has become another word for money, greed, or any entity that promises wealth in the New Testament. It's a pretty fitting reputation considering he's the prince of hell that represents greed according to Peter Binsfield. Did I mention he's also a fallen angel? Apparently he was more interested in heaven's golden pavement than serving God. His greatest skill is his ability to influence the human mind. Mammon's greed is so strong that it's said even the most innocent of people can be corrupted by his power. His grip holds holds them to the point of obsession, where all they can think about and focus on is the treasures he's dangling in front of them. Because of his ability, Mammon is considered a demon capable of enslaving people. We see Mammon in the New Testament during the Gospel according to Matthew, one of Jesus' disciples. He denounces Mammon, drawing a line between the demon of greed and God, saying, I quote, "Ye cannot serve God and Mammon." In some readings, Mammon is considered to be the son of Lucifer himself. Saint Gregory of Nyssa, a bishop of the Roman Catholic Church, even went as far as saying Mammon and Beelzebub are one in the same. Considering that Beelzebub is regarded as one of the worst demons of all time, it's safe to say that Mammon is not a demon you want to mess with. Coming in at number 2, we have Belial. The name Belial is used for Satan himself at one point in the Bible, so I think that speaks to how horrific this demon is. In the New Testament from Corinthians, it reads, I quote, "What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever?" This is a clear reference to good versus evil or God versus Satan. More commonly, Belial is used as the personification of wickedness and even means wicked or worthless in Hebrew. In the Old Testament, the word Belial is used quite a few times, but never referencing a specific being. However, there is mention of children of Belial, daughter of Belial, and man of Belial, so it could be argued that Belial is a being of some sort. Belial makes an appearance in the Book of Resurrection of Jesus Christ by Bartholomew the Apostle, a pseudonymous work of the New Testament Apocrypha. He can be seen along with 666 fallen angels when Jesus commands Michael to show hell to the disciples. In other readings, Belial is a prince of Jinnistan and he commands 80 legions of demons. And finally, in at number 1, we have Asmodeus. Also known as the King of Demons in the Deuterocanonical Book of Tobit, like Mammon and Belphegor, Asmodeus is a prince of hell and included in Peter Binsfield's classification of demons as the personification of lust. His wickedness is undeniable, as is his talent for spreading lust among people from all walks of life. Most scholars agree that his origin comes from the demon Ashmedeva from Zoroastrianism, which Jewish and Christian faith molded into Asmodeus. We also see this sexual deviant in the Talmud and Testament of Solomon doing what he does best, lusting after Solomon's beautiful wives. In a fit of rage, Asmodeus threw Solomon 400 miles into the desert and took his place as king until he was eventually driven out. In the Dictionary Infernal by Colin de Plancy, Asmodeus is depicted as quite the monstrosity despite his honor of representing lust. He sports 3 equally nasty heads, one of a sheep, one of a bull, and one of a ghastly man. His human head certainly leaves something to be desired, being shown with jagged teeth, a hooked nose, and a fire-breathing mouth. Below the belt is just as strange. He has rooster-like legs and a scaly tail of a serpent. His trusty seed follows suit, showing as a line with the neck and wings of a dragon. Coming in at number 5, we have Abaddon. The Old Testament is kind of like the dark side of the Bible. It's filled with stories of death, destruction, and more death. Abaddon, also known as the Destroyer and Angel of Abyss, is one of the characters in the good book that is not so good. Remember in the book of Revelations when God destroys most of the earth and its inhabitants? Well, Abaddon is a key player in the brutal event that left the world in shreds. According to the story, 7 trumpets sounded to mark each step of the apocalypse. The first 4 attacked the earth, water, and skies, killing a third of the planet's wildlife, vegetation, fresh water, oceans, and light. This indirectly caused the death of many people, but it wasn't until Abaddon was unleashed that God struck humans directly. As the 5th trumpet sounded, a star fell from the sky, opening a bottomless pit in Earth's crust. Smoke funneled out of the dark abyss and out came a horde of mutant locusts, commanded by Abaddon to inflict intense pain to the people of Earth. Equipped with a scorpion tail, these little monstrosities set out to torture humans for 5 months, but not to kill them. That would have been too humane, I suppose.
Coming in at number 4, we have Legion. Perhaps the most haunting story in the New Testament is that of Legion. He lived among the dead deep within the tombs, appearing not much more alive than a corpse. At night, the townspeople would hear his screams and avoid the man said to be possessed by the unclean spirits, also known as demons. No longer could they control him, he kept breaking loose from the chains that bound him at his wrists and ankles. Night and day he wandered the wild while cutting his own flesh with sharp stones and shrieking in agony. One day while traveling along the lake to the region of the Gerasenes, Jesus gets out of his boat and is abrasively approached by the man of no name. Dropping to his knees before him, the man begs Jesus not to torture him, for the Lord had commanded the evil spirits to emerge. Jesus then asked, "What is your name?" to which the possessed man replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Fearing that they would be cast away into the abyss, the many demons that possessed the man asked to be sent along the pigs in the nearby hillside. Jesus granted the demons permission, and off they went to the thousands of pigs. Now possessed by the evil spirits, the herd plunged to their death and were drowned in the lake below. This man was finally free from the legion of demons.
Coming in at number 3 is Berith or Baalberith. In Christian demonology, this demon is considered the chief secretary of the underworld or Great Duke of Hell. This high-ranking official is often seen as the same as Beelzebub in some theories, but in this context they're not to be confused. His name apparently means God of the Covenant, so if any demons in hell need paperwork signed, Berith is the guy to get the job done. He's often depicted as a demonic soldier riding a red horse and sporting a golden crown upon his head. In other grimoires, his skin is also red. This demon is known for manipulating and tempting men to commit heinous acts, like blasphemy and murder. Berith is also said to be one of the demons who possessed a nun in the famous Louvier's exorcism case.
Coming in at number 2 we have Adrammelech, known as the Fire King. The name Adrammelech only appears in the Old Testament twice, but his stories pack a mean punch, especially with children. The first time he's mentioned, he's regarded as the son of the Assyrian king. He ends up murdering his father in cold blood while in the temple worshipping his idol. The worst part is that this story is relatively tame compared to the next time we see the name Adrammelech. In the Book of Kings, he's mentioned as being a sun god worshipped by the Sepharvites, who were sacrificing in his honor by burning them alive, hence the Fire King nickname. Adrammelech is often depicted with the torso of a man, the head of a mule, and the tail of a peacock. Okay, so that doesn't sound as scary as you're expecting a demon to be, but there's something unsettling about his looks. However, in other lore, he's considered Satan's stylist, so he must be doing something right. Another nickname he holds is Chancellor of Hell, which kinda reminds me of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine from Star Wars. Interestingly enough, both villains indirectly cause children to be killed. Adrammelech with the children sacrificed in his honor, and manipulated Anakin with the younglings, but I digress. In Robert Silverberg's short story Basilisk, he's described as guile and mischief than Satan.
In the number 1 spot is none other than Beelzebub. If you've ever heard the song Bohemian Rhapsody, then you've heard the name Beelzebub. I won't sing it again for you, I sang it in a previous video. I won't do it again. He's considered one of the big wigs in the fiery pits of hell and is sometimes an alternative name for the devil himself in Christianity. Beelzebub is one of the most powerful demons. In the Gospel, according to Mark, the Pharisees disparagingly accused Jesus of exorcising demons by the power of Beelzebub, and even refers to Beelz as Prince of Devils. He's also considered one of the 7 princes of hell by German bishop and theologian Peter Binsfeld. In 1589, Binsfeld paired each of the deadly sins with a demon, ranking them the highest authority in hell. Beelzebub has the honor of representing gluttony. Lord of the Flies is another name for this terrifying demon, given he's the leader of the Order of the Fly. He's often depicted as an actual fly or a grotesque creature with massive wings. It is said that Beelzebub was a prominent figure in the Salem witch trials. You know, the mass witch hysteria towards the end of the 17th century that had more than 200 people accused of witchcraft and led to the slaying of 19 people. Yeah, well, Beelzebub was blamed for corrupting said people and turning them on a path to Satan.
Coming in at number 5, we've got Astaroth. You feeling lazy lately? After a good year or so indoors, followed by some intense socialization, you probably feel like it's time to hibernate again. Fall is rapidly approaching, and with it the desire to drink hot tea and never leave the house. There are horror movies to be watched and fall recipes to be cooked, but be careful. If you use all of this as an excuse, you might be under the influence of Astaroth. Riding around on the back of a dragon and carrying a staff that sort of looks like a snake, this dude is all about laziness. Astaroth's whole deal is tempting mortals into being lazy. Once he gets them there, it's so much easier to manipulate them into bad behavior. More souls for hell, more blood for the blood god, and all that good stuff. Sounds like fun, right? That's not all he does though, although that is a pretty rough task. People are naturally inclined to laziness anyway, so being tempted into that kind of thing is the worst. In addition to that though, he's also the treasurer of hell, and helps the new demons get a hang of things when they first show up, showing them the super hot ropes and whatnot. Interesting that hell has a currency that they needed organized, eh? I'm sure he does plenty of laundering across all sorts of seedy underworld activities. Interestingly enough, witches see Astaroth a little differently. They consider him a female demon with expertise in all sorts of areas, more specifically, lust, protection, and love. So Astaroth can be many things, but one thing is for sure, and that is Astaroth's terrible breath. That's a fun little demonic detail. In Christian lore, it appears that Astaroth also has dominion over math, and can make people invisible in their search for treasure, so Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones may have something to talk to this demon about. And like most demons of higher orders, Astaroth can answer any questions asked as long as they fall under the topics he knows about. Coming in at number 4, we've got Olivier. A real jerk, this one. We can see this playing out across all cultures and eras, and it's always justified by some ridiculous standard. Cruelty and hatred towards the poor and disenfranchised. More than ever, the line between stable and in the street is thin and blurry, and Olivier takes full advantage of this. I'm sure all sorts of entrepreneurs, influencers, and money hoarders have been visited by this demon. Olivier, baby, the so-called prince of archangels down in the depths, and patron demon of encouraging malice and viciousness towards the poor. That is indeed a low demon to be. We live in a messed up world already. Why should the poor be reviled for simply being poor? At what point do we decide that work is the ultimate good and that nothing else can stand in for that morally or economically? It seems as though the folks who do the most important, most real work, say building the structures that we inhabit or bringing food to the masses, get the short end of the stick. And Olivier apparently has a fair share in keeping that the way things are. Middle managers and corporate drones keep their specific machines chugging and then dump on the poor, telling them that they should simply work harder. Forget Astaroth making folks lazy, making folks think that others are lazy for not making as much money as them is really wild. Olivier, you really are a rat, aren't you? Coming in number 3, we've got Adrammelech. So we talked about Beelzebub last time and his tendency to bring about terrible things. There's plenty of responsibility that comes with being Lord of the Flies, and he's got to have some help from time to time. Unfortunately, there aren't any temp agencies or internship programs in hell. Most folks are just destined to do their jobs and do them for all of time. This is where Adrammelech comes in. This demon does his best to give Beelzebub a hand by assisting the Lord of the Flies as a great minister and chancellor, a lofty title for such an interesting demon. On top of being this assistant in Hell's hierarchy, Adrammelech was also known for being a sun god who demanded human sacrifice. So even before being adopted by those beneath the surface, he was causing trouble. I wonder how many humans were dropped in his name. And I wonder how many of them ended up in hell, possibly even under his command. Makes you think now, doesn't it? There might be a moon god brother out there demanding similar bloodshed, but I can't make any guarantees. Lastly, before I go, I'll bring up a point I mentioned in another video. Adrammelech has quite the eye for fashion and quite possibly a taste for Prada. You see, the devil relies upon this particular demon for all of his wardrobe needs. That's right, Adrammelech is in charge of the clothes the devil wears. You'd think that down in hell it wouldn't matter all that much, but vanity is a sin, so that fits right in. Coming in number 2, we've got Vereen. Oh, this is a nasty one. Patience is a virtue indeed, and it is so easy to lose it. Plus, once patience is off the table, everything just gets so much worse. Sure, some can sit back, relax, and wait, but there are so many forces acting against you at all times. Who wants to wait, right? Especially in this era of constant and instant gratification. Why sit quietly and be ready for whatever when you can do a nosedive into your phone and drown in all of the readily available content? Hell, I bet a lot of you folks watching right now should be doing something else, or at least preparing to do something. Vereen is the demon of impatience and loves to push humans towards acting impatiently. He does it without delay too, no waiting in line, no queuing up, no sitting about until something good happens. So all the folks in your life who seem to act impatiently are probably being influenced by this demon. The dude in the beat up Corolla who doesn't seem to know what a zipper merge is and decides to rush all the way to the end of the disappearing lane to just nose his way in? Vereen. The lady at the supermarket who absolutely can't believe all of these selfish people with full carts in front of her line unbelievable despite her equally full cart. Vereen. Those folks who pre-order every gosh darn pop culture artifact they think is cool and then whine until it finally arrives in the mail. Vereen. Impatience will end us all, especially if we give into it. Most things will come with time, but if you try too hard to speed up the process, you're just asking for heightened blood pressure and a desire to lash out at all those around you. And that's no fun. Some actually describe Vereen as a female demon too, so if you subscribe to that belief, ignore what I said before while referring to this entity as male. Interestingly enough, this impatient demon is mostly aligned with creation rather than destruction, which is a strange thing for a demon to do, but hey, I'm not going to claim to understand the whims and goals of each and every underworld entity. One last little tidbit before we move on to our final demon of the day, Vereen was supposedly involved in a pretty large-scale possession way back in the 17th century. Yep, it possessed a whole swath of nuns, which had plenty of implications for the church and those who followed it. Fun, right? And finally, at number 1, we've got Luvart. Supposedly the only fallen angel amidst the demonic hierarchy, Luvart is often referred to as the Prince of Angels. High praise for someone so low. This demon is many things, but one that appears quite often is the idea that he presides over possessions. Luvart was even blamed for the possession of Sister Madeleine during the demonic attacks in 17th century France. A round of applause for Luvart, everyone. Jolly good show. Coming in at number 5, we've got Asmodeus. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got Asmodeus, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of Asmodeus killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, Asmodeus would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. Asmodeus is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank Asmodeus for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got Abisu. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abisu. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell, too. See, Abisu left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abisu was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abisu is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abisu also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abisu was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abisu will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey. Do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebos. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages, tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him.